They top blue earnings estimates as purchases in high frequency categories like food and beauty help prop up weaker customer spending. They're up more than 15% on the day.
Wow.
So same challenges though that they've been facing over the last years. Shoppers aren't buying much more than the necessities. They're hungry for lower prices. That's super interesting. Does that speak to the fact that maybe we're in a recession, or, I mean, consumers only buying the necessities? That kind of sounds like not great economic times to me.
Cool.
No
what, did you ask me a question? I'm sorry.
Target that they are mostly seeing consumers buy only necessities, and not much more beyond that. So that looks like not great economic times, right?
I don't know. I mean, with this whole deflation narrative, if it is true, you do know that deflation can be more of a risk than inflation to an economy, especially when a country gets really knocked into a deflationary cycle. That means people get laid off and there's less money to spend, and the people that have money don't want to spend it.
We're going from inflation deflating to regular levels.
Yeah, but if it could cause a spiral downwards, and then we really see the effect that it has. You see something like Japan in the 1990s, 1980, and the 1980s. If we look at do you think that this here? Let's see, like the Nikkei 225. 225. I mean, this is definitely something that could happen. Wait, is this? It only goes back to 2017. I can't find the.
And since we are short on our stream today, shall we look through your soft commodity data?
Here we go. So the Nikkei 225, similar to the S&P 500, but for Japan. So following World War II, there was some pretty massive growth in the Nikkei. And then especially when the 1970s came around, and then it was, the big tech video game craze. Like, look, in 1971 in the Japanese markets, there was basically, let's see here, almost 2 years. No, a little over, yeah. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now, a year pretty much of just solid monthly green candles. And then we got level off, and then it was just absolutely tearing higher into the 80s, and throughout the 80s when, Atari was a big thing, and Nintendo, all this and that, and just all these Japanese gaming companies were making a shit ton of money. And
car company, they got car companies.
Yeah, and then car companies, everything. They were just producing everything, and everybody wanted a piece of Japan.
Electronics.
And then it wore off in 1989.
Shit.
And since then, it's been a pretty bad bear market from 1990 until.
Almost recovered.
I mean, we're almost at the level. Yeah, I mean, the bear market kind of like, I'd say it ended in 2009, but for the past, if you're a Japanese investor in the Nikkei, for the past 30 years or longer, you've kind of just been sidelined with diminishing. I mean, I could make the argument that if you were very Warren Buffett about it and waited for these really, really significant downward moves, and you kind of caught the dips and you were DCA over the time, you could have, if you were just waiting for those 5%, 10%, those corrections, those very massive moves, either relative to the previous day or the previous week or whatever. If you just found those low points and you were buying, you might have been making some money. But yeah, I mean, do you think we could see something like that happening with the S&P 500 if we kind of compare it? We've just been kind of seeing kind of a similar, I don't want to say kind of a similar, because we had, I don't know, it's hard to compare Japan's economy.
Well, it also is bigger than.
Well, look at this. If you really zoom in on the monthly, you really just see how green and how violently green this month has been in the grand scheme of S&P 500. I guess you can make the argument that this COVID April
Yeah, but that's like QE.
Yeah, that was
Fucking.
QE, all this. Today, it's just like, we got CPI, deflationary expectations.
Yeah, but I mean, who knows? Maybe rates get lowered, inflation continues to come down. Shit,
Hmm.
hard to
You
tell.
said that we're getting a little short on time. I kind of wanted to cover a couple more things.
Hit it.
Yeah, so this is something that's really pissing me off. We were talking about eggs, and now we got record high beef prices. U.S. beef prices hit record highs as nation's cattle herd expected to shrink through 2025. Now I'm going to put on the tinfoil hat really, really hard. This is a very big push by the World Economic Forum to get rid of meat for whatever reason. They want to replace it with bug meat. And, my tinfoil hat's really getting on here now. There is incentive to farm less. And we could see this wasn't there the Dutch revolt in the Netherlands or whatever, that they were taking up all the Dutch farms and the farmers were revolting with their tractors and whatever. I haven't heard much about that recently, but Brazilian processor Global Foods SA warned that U.S. cattle herds will continue shrinking through the midpoint of the decade. I mean, it makes sense if there's subsidies and if there's incentives to either not farm the land that you have. Like, I think they're paying certain farmers to not farm, or they're paying certain crop producing farmers to not farm that crop and farm something else. So it's like a big push for monocropping, whatever, or don't even farm your land. This trend is going to continue, and for me especially, I'm a big beef fan, so this is my sign to go and buy a farm and raise cows myself, because
egg whites and
egg whites and beef, man. Like, these are the two healthiest things that anybody can eat. They don't want you to be healthy,
What about chicken?
Chicken, yes. All these things, it's like you just keep it real simple. Poultry, eggs, fish, meat, these are the things that we've been eating for thousands of years. And only recently, people say that, red meat is, I'm not going to argue with these studies, because people will cite me on a million different things and say, what about this? What about this? What about that? It's my personal opinion and my personal take that I don't believe these things are unhealthy, and only time will tell. And if I do, for some reason, because I've been eating all this red meat, get cancer, I could say, well, was it from this or was it from that? And you just play the game down the line. But at the end of the day, time is the fire in which we all burn. So
at the end of the day, you don't eat your.
At the end of the day, I'm just going to eat my meat and get my protein.
At the end of the day, it's just about protein.
So this article is just showing that beef prices per pound since, like 2009, 2007, 50% lower than we're at right now. 2.5 per pound on average, and now we're at 5.1. That's pretty wild. I mean, I did not see that it was going to be rising this much, and I thought beef is. I mean, you can get beef for like $6 or $7 a pound at a grocery store. If you go to a butcher shop somewhere a little bit local, maybe you can get like in bulk. Maybe you can get it pretty relatively cheaper. But you're not finding beef for less than $5 a pound at most places. People got to make their money. As we see here, U.S. herd for beef cow replacement falls to lowest levels since 1962. We had that spike going into the 80s, and then since then we've just been declining in cattle herd. It says U.S. beef exports are forecasted to slide 14% this year from 3 billion to 3 billion pounds. So it was 14% higher, so probably like 3.2 billion around there. The lowest since the early days of the pandemic, when plant closures crushed meat packers. USDA warned beef production is expected to decline further next year. Man, this is all setting the scene for higher beef prices, and I don't like it. I gotta like make a beef hedge trade somehow and just like buy my beef in advance, or just.
Well, maybe you should buy like a lot of beef right now, and then you can
arb it in the future.
Options on beef or some shit.
Yeah. Dude, I mean, there's lean hog futures. So I'm sure there's some cattle futures on the NYMEX, I think. I'd have to find a way to trade cattle futures, because if that's the case, what I'll do is I'll just buy a really far dated contract, like 2025 or 2026. This is like when they expect it to cut even further. I'll just take delivery of like 10,000 cows and just like me and my boys will just be like chilling with some cows.